Parties, honorable members of parliament, former national leaders, civil society organizations, distinguished guests, director and staff of the Office of the Leader of the Opposition, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We are delighted to have you join us this morning. Thank you for making the time. I want to take note of colleagues on this end with myself. At the extreme, she was not properly introduced. That is Madame Agnes Chirabo. She's the Executive Director of Food Rights Alliance. She's very passionate about food and making sure that all Ugandans are healthy and get to eat quality food. Of course, former leader of the opposition, the Honorable Winnie Kiza. Thank you for joining us in that capacity. I'll talk about the others later, or the other for that matter. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great responsibility, obligation, and deep commitment to our nation that we present the alternative budget priorities for the financial year 2025-2026. These alternative budget priorities reflect the needs, aspirations, and realities faced by the people of Uganda. This year's alternative budget priorities were born out of a consultative process. We reached out to all opposition political parties, plus some civil society organizations, to share their input, and would like to appreciate all those who gave us feedback on the same. The past year has been yet another chapter in the government's long history of economic mismanagement. Ugandans are struggling to afford basic needs, while those in power prioritize personal wealth accumulation over public service. The government's reckless spending on fraudulent projects while neglecting essential services is a betrayal of the social contract they have with the people of Uganda. Let us consider the Lubowa Specialized Hospital Project. This is a project which is a clear example of organized corruption, in my very considered opinion. The government has spent billions of taxpayers' money on this project, yet there is no clear deadline on when it will open. At the same time, public hospitals across the country lack funding and cannot even provide basic care. Because of this, many Ugandans are forced to either seek treatment overseas or to suffer in poorly equipped health facilities across the country. The situation is no different for companies like Day Biopharma Limited, Atiak Sugar, Rocco Construction Limited, and Inspire Coffee Factory, which have benefited from dubious state funding without clear accountability mechanisms. These projects, ladies and gentlemen, have become channels for siphoning public funds, further entrenching a kleptocratic system that prioritizes elite interests over national development. Our alternative budget priority areas, ladies and gentlemen, are grounded in the principles of equity, fiscal responsibility, and public accountability. We are committed to realigning Uganda's financial priorities to serve the people of Uganda. And that's specifically why we are bothered about some of these very odd projects that I've just mentioned about. In the past couple of months, as the opposition, we've been going to these various projects, Atiak Sugar, Day Biopharma, Inspire Coffee Africa, Rocco Construction Limited. Billions of shillings have been injected into these projects, and not much is happening. What's even more problematic is that government gives taxpayers' money to these projects. There's no memorandum of understanding at all. Then government says we are buying shares in these companies. When you ask what's the value, what's the worth of this company, that has not been ascertained. So that shows you the confusion within which government operates. And whenever we mention these things on the floor, I've had people like the Honorable Nabanja say we are making government look bad, forgetting that government looks bad on its own accord. Ladies and gentlemen, the economic outlook for the 2025-2026 financial year remains uncertain. Uganda's total budget has been projected at 71.9 trillion shillings. Persistent fiscal indiscipline, excessive borrowing, and corruption have put immense pressure on our economy. The high cost of debt servicing, which consumes over 30% of our budget, has left little room for investment in critical sectors. Inflation remains a huge concern, with rising prices of essential commodities such as food, fuel, and healthcare. Meanwhile, revenue collection remains suboptimal due to inefficiencies in tax administration, revenue leakages, and inadequate enforcement of tax policies. Our people deserve a budget that works for them, not one that burdens them with unnecessary taxes and then poor service delivery. It's one thing for you to tax the population. It's another for that tax money to be of value to the people of Uganda. As I'm sure many of you know, there are countries where the citizenry pay hefty sums in tax, but they know that when they go to hospital, they'll get good quality medication, courtesy of the government. When they take their children to public schools, they'll attend quality education. The infrastructure is worked on. So the taxpayer knows that when I pay heavily in tax, what is left is really for me. That's not the case for Ugandans. You'll pay heavily in tax, but when you're sick, you'll have to go to private facility for those that can afford, because there's not much in the public ones. You'll have to take your child to a good school for those that can afford, because the UPE schools are tenement structures about to collapse. You see the state of our roads. So we are saying there must be value for taxpayers' money. Let me talk a bit about some key sectoral priorities. And ladies and gentlemen, we have availed two booklets to you. One is a compendium of our alternative budget priorities, highlighting what we do propose, what we would do had we been the ones in power. And like I said, this is a consultative process to see that we get the views of different political parties, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders, so that it's not just our budget, but it is reflective of the people of Uganda. I want to encourage us to find time and read those books and even critique them. It's important that we keep getting feedback. Yes, we did consult, but it's important that as we keep going, you look at what is it that we are proposing. Many times you hear people say, the opposition just opposes. No, that's not the kind of opposition we want to be. We want to be a government in waiting, a proper government in waiting that offers credible alternatives. So I'd like to encourage us, please read. So for those that keep saying we just oppose, find time and read. And I know those people are not in this room, they're out there. So I'm encouraging them, find this work and read it. And we are going to share it on social media. We'll have those links so that people can read and know what it is that we are about. But let me share a few sectoral. The other booklet, of course, is my address for today that captures a couple of those things. One, finance, planning, and economic development sector. The Ministry of Finance, Planning, and Economic Development is responsible for mobilizing financial resources, regulating public expenditure, and ensuring sound financial management. However, Uganda faces significant fiscal challenges, including a rising public debt burden, inefficient budget execution, and financial leakages through corruption and mismanagement. Uganda's debt servicing obligations consume a substantial portion of our national budget, with 21.61 trillion shillings allocated to treasury operations in financial year 2025-2026. Commitment fees on unused loans alone have cost the country 469.8 billion shillings. Imagine that. Between financial year 2018-2019 and 2023-2024. That's a lot of money that is thrown down the drain. Frequent supplementary budgets totaling 6.54 trillion in the current fiscal year alone. And all of this signals poor financial planning and cash flow constraints. Here is what we must do regarding this particular sector. One, we must improve public debt management to reduce excessive borrowing and commitment fees. That's what we are saying as the opposition. Two, we've got to strengthen budget discipline by eliminating unnecessary supplementary budgets. You see, supplementary budgets are a sign of poor planning or no planning at all. Because if you plan, your supplementaries should only be about the unforeseeables. You know that maybe a tragedy happens, like we are seeing now. Floods in different parts of the country, here in Kampala, in Kasese, previously we had a challenge in Bududa and elsewhere. That's when a supplementary budget makes sense. But sometimes they bring to us a supplementary budget, including salaries for civil servants. Ridiculous. How do you not plan for salaries of people that you have as part of your staff? And then that has to come through a supplementary budget. This drama has got to stop. We've got to enhance domestic revenue mobilization by closing tax loopholes and enforcing compliance in high-value sectors like gold mining. While every Ugandan pays their fair share of tax, there are people who don't pay taxes in this country. Ordinary people that sell, little things in their shops downtown, you'll see KCCA running after them to pay tax. You'll see shops being closed, that they've got to pay tax. But people who mine gold and they are raking in billions upon billions of shillings, they're not paying taxes. And we are wondering why. When I was still chairperson of COSASE, one of the reports we tabled, that was the URA report, we were castigating this particular aspect, saying it is problematic. And I remember that time, the figure was 700-something billion. It keeps growing. Why do these people not pay taxes? The answer is because these are the powerful people in this country who are operating in this trade. They'll exempt themselves while everybody else does pay tax. This has got to change. There's got to be equity. We've got to combat corruption by fully implementing anti-graft measures and holding accountable those responsible for financial mismanagement. Our theme for this year's alternative budget priorities is combating corruption the effective way to sure service delivery. I believe that with all of my heart. For us to have effective service delivery in this country, one of the things we need to tackle is corruption. We lose over 10 trillion shillings per year to corruption. That's about a third of what URA collects. And many times they don't even hit their targets. Just think about how many hospitals that money can build, how many roads across the country that 10+ trillion shillings can fix and build, how many schools, how many factories. We have a lot of unemployment in this our country. How much can that money do? So that's why we are saying that combating corruption to effective service delivery. That's the only way. Because even that money which is available for service delivery is stolen. We've got to improve budget transparency and public financial management systems to ensure effective resource allocation. Let me talk a bit about health. Uganda's health sector faces significant challenges, including underfunding. Only 6.1% of the national budget is availed. Of course, there's inadequate infrastructure under the same and shortages of health workers.